Welcome to another version of Know and Sell Pointers. I am Nancy Zaire, the sales whisperer.
And I'm Hirsch Repun, the message therapist.
If you were with us last time, we talked about branding, and we have found some interesting information about Hirsch's brand and also about his ability to help people draw from them the brand. So today we're going to pursue that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a lot about personality issues because one of the things that happens with branding is we assume we're targeting a certain audience, but even within our audience, even within the type of audience that makes up our ideal customer, there are different personality types, and Nancy is an expert in that area in particular.
Yeah, and many of you are familiar with the idea that there are four different personality styles. You may be familiar with DISC. It's probably one of the more popular personality systems. There's also Myers-Briggs. There are colors, animals, shapes, words, objects, and so forth. Uh, the system that I use, Likability, is one that was derived after 35 years of research having to do with how many contacts are needed before buyers can make a buying decision. And hence, I've given them numbers, Hirsch, 2, 4, 6, and 8, that represent the number of contacts. The number 2 buyer clearly needs 1 or 2 contacts only, whereas our number 8 buyer needs 8, or if you turn the 8 on its side, it becomes a symbol for infinity. They need forever.
And that's interesting to talk about. Let's start with eights. Let's start with eights because I was on the buyer side last week and being pitched a product, a service, and ultimately I decided it was great, but I felt very much like an eight, in the sense that I was constantly asking questions. I had a lot of curiosity about it. So let's talk a little bit about the eight and what kind of brand is or isn't a good fit.
Well, it's a great question. The 8, again, is a very intellectual individual. They ask a lot of questions, just as you did during that sales event. They're very curious. They need to take a deep nosedive into the subject area and understand it. Not just what it does, but the science behind it, the explanations, the logic that brought us to this particular place. So the 8 brand is one that is very heady, very intellectual. And for example, your brand, the Yes, BR brand, is definitely going to appeal to an 8 when they understand that it's yes and, because that's a play. That's a very clever use of something from improv. And hence the 8 would tip their hat to you and enjoy that play on words.
Yeah, and it's interesting that in this event that I was dealing with, um, I didn't. I was wondering, am I becoming, as a buyer, more investigative, you know?
It probably depends on the context. You know, we have all 4 styles. We're a combination of all 4 styles, just in a different amount. And depending upon the context, and this could have been maybe a technology purchase. I'm not sure. What kind of purchase was it?
Well, it had to do with bringing on, more people in another service, to service a part of my business. So, it has to do with sales. It has to do with its customer service in a lot of ways. So it's going to represent me. So it's going to, that's always, I think, something that we take a little more time with versus, oh, it's a it's an organizer or it's a utility, you know.
Yeah, and that's my point, that you became very eight. And by the way, I do think that you're strong in the eight characteristic. I mean, that's not your only trait, of course.
Right.
And hence, yes, you used a lot of questions to probe and understand it. So how does this relate to branding? You know, Hirsch, when I look at people's LinkedIn profiles, especially, the banners are often a place where you can tell somebody's an eight. And also, the headline section is another area. And the reason I mentioned those two is that the headline, often the eights are do-it-yourselfers. They're clever, they're smart, they play with words, they play with images, and they show their cleverness in that banner behind them. So if you look at the banner, you'll see that. And of course, the other way they show their intellectual prowess and their smarts is the headline, because the headline might be kind of cute and clever. Or, for example, the name of their company. Mine is Rapport Builders. It ends with a Z. And that Z for Zaire, I explained that, when I was looking online to buy the URL, Rapport Builders with an S was gone. Well, again, the intellectual smart part of me said, "Ooh, put the Z there." So that was my eight coming forward in terms of being clever. And by the way, I am pretty high on eight.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing that viewers may want to know when looking for a match, just as we do in life, as when looking for a match from your brand to a prospective customer or client. How close to your own personality are you looking for?
That's a great question, because most people tend to sell the way we buy. And so that there is a coordination between who we are as the buyer and who we are as the seller. Hence, when we are naming our business, when we're creating a brand of whatever sort, we tend to stay close to who we are. Now, there are exceptions. I have found a few people who have decided that the number two style of selling is better. Now, I don't know that it's better, but number
Right.
two buyers or number two sellers are very driven for success. They want to come out on top. They want to be the best. When there's a sales incentive in a company, that number two will strive to be first and recognized. So there is perhaps a misbelief, a myth, that to be a number two means I'm going to be more successful in selling. So every now and again, Hirsch, I will see somebody morph into that number two. That is not their natural style. And then they wonder why they're not getting the number of clients that they want.
Oh,
Interesting,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you know when someone is a number two personality type versus a number eight personality type. Well, there's still four and six, and as we've said, as you've mentioned, there's different. You have different types and different combinations. Um, you know, but talk a little bit about the four and six relative to you and I, because I think that helps. I think for people to watch this and see themselves in the conversation, it gives them a point of reference.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're right. We do want to connect with people and feel that sense that we're alike. Hence, that's why I call my system a likability. And we're both very strong in four. The four style is a style that cares about others and is very motivated by helping others and doing good and serving the community and making a difference in the world. And if that doesn't characterize the two of us, I don't know what does.
Yeah, yeah, and I think to that extent, um, finding someone who is that four and really wants to have an impact, wants to make a difference, maybe they're at a point in their career where they want to give back, but they might also do well to connect with someone who has maybe that, but also two, like a 2-4, because the two, if I understand correctly, might be more apt to actually move on a decision, right?
That's right. And so when you and I were thinking about our ideal prospects, if you remember, we did a little exercise. And by the way, it's the same kind of exercise that Hirsch would do with you, or I would do with you, if you're trying to find your ideal prospect and brand yourself. So when we did this exercise, we identified that we were looking for a heart-centered individuals, like the number 4. We also recognized that we were going after people who were professionally trained. Hence, they probably have a good amount of the number 8. They're intellectually bright and stimulated, and they have obviously done their homework and learned their profession. But we also knew that we wanted to throw in a dash of the number 2, because it's exactly what you said, Hirsch. It's that the person who takes action, the person who's a go-getter, the person who wants to succeed, the person who has ambition, but not at the expense of hurting others. And that's the big difference in terms of why the number 2 isn't as strong in our ideal client profile as it might be in somebody else's profile.
We might associate number 2 with transactional business styles.
Yes. Yes.
But we haven't talked about 6 so much. And then I have a kind of a follow-up way to get some more pointers out of you, because we are kind of leaning on your expertise. But go ahead with 6.
So our number 6 person, they are slower to make up their mind. They need 5, 6, 7 contacts, hence the average being 6. If you know anything about sales statistics, 70% of sales happen after 6 touch points. I read today, Hirsch, in LinkedIn, someone posted that to get noticed, you need 7 contacts. And then the next 5 are when people start getting to think about whether or not they want to work with you. So the number 6 obviously is taking their time. And what are they doing? They are vetting you. They are looking you up on the Better Business Bureau. They're looking at your profile. They're looking for recommendations. They're reading testimonies, because it's very important to them that they be safe and secure. So they are looking for a known, true, and tried commodity. And even though they're hiring, say, a coach or a consultant, and of course, unless you are, a well-known name like a Tony Robbins or an Oprah Winfrey, there's a good chance that people aren't going to know you that way. Hence, this is the person who needs, again, that assurance that you will deliver what you say you would deliver. So they need to feel that there is a system and a process that you're following so that they can feel secure. And this is also the person, Hirsch, that needs a guarantee. So if there's some way to reduce risk and make it seem like it's a comfortable, safe choice, that's our number 6.
Yes. And then what I was going to put out there is, if we have a certain kind of business, someone who's watching it has a certain kind of business, and there professions that tend toward one of the 2, 4, 6, 8 types. So in other words, what might I say? I don't want to work with this people in this field, because they're likely not my avatar based on their type.
Yeah. So let us take a couple of occupations, because you're absolutely right. Certain professions are strongly attracted because of their personality style. There's a mesh. So if you're very smart and very bright and intellectually motivated, well, teaching is a good profession, especially college teaching, because this is an area where you do research and where you publish and where you speak in front of audiences. As opposed to, for example, elementary teaching. Elementary teaching is much more working with kids and hands-on and caring for them, but it also, Hirsch, is about helping them learn the rules. Hence, you get the 4-6 combination as teachers. So you're absolutely right. Certain occupations gravitate, there's a mesh between the personality style and what we do for a living.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I think we've provided some really good foundation for the brand type relationship. I think that more and more people are becoming aware of the DISC, the Myers-Briggs, all that stuff. But I think there's a layer that is specifically about what we do, branding and sales.
Yeah, definitely. And the application, it's one thing to know something, it's another thing to put it into practice, which is the reason why you might work with Hirsch or with me or with us both. And with that, Hirsch, I think we need to end this segment of Know and Sell Pointers. Dr. Nancy Zare, the sales whisperer.
And Hirsch Repun, the message therapist.